Now, Zambia recently declared a state of disaster following an ongoing devastating drought affecting over 1 million households in the country and threatening national food security. President Hakainde Hichilema has since announced urgent measures amidst this crisis. And joining us to unpack Zambia's climate crisis in greater detail is SSA macroeconomist at Absa CIB, Ridle Markus. Ridle, always a pleasure and a good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
All right, let's get right into it. Maybe before we get into what climate change has done to that Zambian economy, this is an economy that actually has been enjoying quite a bit of growth and quite a bit of confidence.
Absolutely. I think it's important to point out that when in 2022 and even the beginning of 2023, when many other central banks struggled with inflation and was hiking the policy rates, Zambia was actually able to maintain a fairly, shall I call, subdued inflation rate, and also the policy rate was not hiked. And then, of course, inflation started to increase in 2023, and the central bank had to start to react to that. So what we've seen so far is, despite a growth of nearly 5% last year, that the risk or the downside risk to growth has certainly increased. We've seen inflation going from 9.4% in January last year to 13.5% at the latest reading in February. We've seen the policy rate increase by 350 basis points, and also a very steep increase in the statutory reserve requirements. So the increased living costs are certainly going to put significant pressure on consumers and the economy in general, in addition, of course, to the latest bad news around the impact of the drought on the economy.
Let's talk about the drought, and the different aspects that is playing itself into Ridle.
So, of course, Zambia is big in copper production, is the bread and butter of the country, but also agriculture is fairly strong. So, from those two, agriculture and mining, that is a huge component of the economy, and yet the drought has now resulted in not only grain production, agriculture production coming under significant strain, but also large-scale power cuts across the economy. Average consumer and businesses will probably see power cuts of up to 8 hours a day, while in the mining sector, ZESCO, the state power company, asked the mines to cut production by between 20 to 25%. So any hope that stronger copper production this year will give the economy a boost, I think that has been dampened. So the two major sectors of the economy experiencing some severe pressure at this point in time. And they're even talking about the importation of grain, possibly from Uganda or even Tanzania. And then that will, of course, push imports up. Power imports also needed. That will increase it further. And on the other side of the current account, or on the export side, you will have the copper production coming under pressure. So that could see a larger current account a deficit potentially developing, which again puts pressure on the currency. Not a great outlook for the economy in the near term.
It is a rather bleak picture. I'm keen to get your thoughts also on just responding to climate change. Of course, that needs to be something that the government there and the economy can respond to for long-term purposes, of course, because we know that climate change isn't going to get better. I'm wondering if we know of that, infrastructure development or just a permanent response to a drought and the likes.
And that's an excellent question. We've seen so many of our markets now having to increase the allocation to the agriculture sector to ensure greater resilience to climate change. And in Zambia's case, of course, there's always been strong support for the agriculture sector. But now Zambia is set in a precarious fiscal position, being in default and trying to negotiate with commercial creditors and other creditors to move out of default. However, while we don't have a deal with commercial creditors yet, on the fiscal side, the country is very much reliant on multilateral assistance. So you can argue that the public finances are not in a great state. They're working very hard with the support of the IMF to improve that. But this drought now comes at a time when fiscal balances are looking a little bit more uncertain, given the fact that we don't have a deal with commercial creditors yet, and yet the most vulnerable of the population needs to be supported through this period, including, of course, the agriculture sector, where farmers will start to apply for more drought assistance from authorities. Not great at all. We already see food inflation at over 14% and continue to increase. So this is going to, result in a lot of pressure on especially the most vulnerable in this economy.
We do know also, Ridle, that, President Hakainde Hichilema has been very, very intentional on building Zambia's investment case. I think at the mining Indaba, we even heard of him being lauded for really implementing the kind of reforms that do encourage investment. I'm wondering if this is a rough patch in all of that. It is hard work to convince any investor that you're open for business. And could a drought like this be a dampener on those prospects?
Absolutely. I think, again, the drought could potentially, impact the outlook for the next 6 months. But we remain fairly constructive on a longer term story. Zambia has found new investors for KCM and Mopani mines. We know that Barry Gold and FTM have committed billions of dollars in fresh investment into the mining sector. And even the new investors are going to pump more money into expanding capacity. So on that side, it looks fantastic. We've also seen in the past that these kind of weather conditions are very volatile. So we could see rains coming back towards the end of the year, and it will boost the agriculture sector. But generally, I think once the debt restructuring issues are resolved, or that comes to a conclusion, strong agriculture sector, if you can get past this drought, and of course, a bright outlook for the copper sector, the mining sector in general, that puts Zambia in a great place to record continuous strong growth over the longer term. So I agree with President Hichilema. It's a strong investment case. However, there are these sort of short-term challenges that need to be overcome.
Certainly watching keenly through that one. Ridle, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure hearing from you. That was Sub-Saharan African macroeconomist at Absa CIB, Ridle Markus.